I'm kind of a thrift store addict. As I've gotten a bit older, I've grown out of it a bit and tried to cut down on my belongings. However, when I was in university, I used to frequently visit my local thrift shops in search of, well, anything. One day while searching, my friend came across a game. It was in a long blue box, felt quite heavy, and had a cover that none of us could recognize. It was $4.99. Me and my friends looked at each other in glee as we just determined what our Friday night plans would be. The game was called Nightmare. Well, actually in some places it was called Atmosphere. However, the one we found was called Nightmare, so that's what I'll be referring to it as. We took the game home, unpacked it, and set it up, and later on, 5 of us played it. But as soon as it was done, I was mad because I realized that Nightmare is the kind of game you can only really play once. Or rather, you can play it a million times, but only really experience it once to a degree. See, Nightmare is a VHS board game, or video board game, which means that the game comes with a VHS tape to be played as soon as the game starts, and players are to listen to the tape and interact with it in order to finish the game. Due to the nature of this, once you've played the game and watched the tape, you know what's going to happen in the game and when it's going to happen. Once I realized this, I was mad because the game was so hilarious and so entertaining, and I was disappointed that I wouldn't truly be able to experience it again. However, now that a few years have passed since I played it, I've realized 2 things. First of all, I've realized that you very quickly forget what the hell the game even is, and what happens in the video, and that the cards you draw and the player order changes every time you play, which leads to a different experience every time. But, my own short-sightedness aside, I've come to understand that it's the nature of the game itself, being a product of the 90s on a VHS tape, that makes it so special. Not for the cheesy effects and dialogue, or even the nostalgic feeling of using a VCR, but the ability to force the players to appreciate the moment, to accept the fact that once you're done playing this game, you can never really experience it untainted again. This is how Nightmare taught me to appreciate an experience.
So, you want to play the game? My game, by my rules. I am the gatekeeper!
Nightmare was an Australian VHS board game released in 1991 by the companies A Couple of Cowboys and J.W. Spears & Sons. The concept of Nightmare is that you're one of the 6 harbingers, and that you want to escape the other side. However, there's an evil gatekeeper who is creatively named the Gatekeeper, whose job it is to not let you pass. You and up to 5 other harbingers need to write your greatest fear on a card and place it in the middle of the board. Then, you all roll dice and move around the board with the goal being for each player to collect their 6 keys, while the timer counts down on the VHS tape. If a player collects all their keys and then draws someone else's fear from the middle, the players win. If this does not happen before the time runs out, the Gatekeeper wins. I've never really understood this greatest fear element of the game, but that's the rules. There are 3 different types of cards that players can draw while playing. The chance cards are pretty straightforward. Pick a card with a chance of a good or a bad outcome. Sometimes these cards may ask the player to flip a coin for the outcome as well. The fake cards are similar to chance cards, but their effect is only triggered if something specific happens later in the game. For example, if the Harbinger Baron Samedi lands on your gravestone, toss a coin to get the result. The time cards are the most interesting specifically for the game, as these cards have a timestamp on them, and when that time appears on the screen, something happens. I think that's a cool and interesting way to make use of the video board game format. To make this process more difficult on the player, the Gatekeeper randomly interrupts the video and annoys, rewards, or punishes the players.
You are a worry, a concern to me. No matter. I banish you to the black hole.
When the Gatekeeper appears on the video, he may summon a player by saying something like,
"John! Who holds the most number of my keys?"
And if the player does not respond to the man on the VHS tape by saying,
"Yes, my gatekeeper!"
they are punished. The primary source of fun and entertainment of the game is this gatekeeper character. One element of the game that I think is actually done very well is the slow progression of the gatekeeper. Every time the gatekeeper appears on the screen, he becomes more and more demented. First in little ways like touches of makeup and voice effects, and then eventually in glowing red eyes, special effects on his face, and lighting as well. This is a cool way to mark time, but also it helps keep the video interesting. Time is also marked by a crescent moon slowly turning into a full moon over the course of the video, but the gatekeeper's transformation is much more noticeable. You can tell that the actor who played the gatekeeper, his name is Winatni Nasul, is having so much fun during this recording, and honestly, he deserves an award for carrying the weight of this game on his shoulders alone. This added stress of the gatekeeper's looming presence helps to immerse players to engagement, adding horror to the game. But he's also used as a marker of time, reminding the players that every time he appears, the end is soon near.
This is the end of my game, but just the beginning of your nightmare.
Something that I think the game doesn't get enough credit for is incorporating elements of role-playing into a game meant for a broad family audience. One way the game does this is in the instructions that state that you're not playing as yourself, but you're playing as one of the 6 harbingers. Another way is by insisting that the players speak to the gatekeeper as if he's really in the room.
Yes, my gatekeeper.
These are minor touches, but they help to immerse the player in small ways and bring the niche interest of role-playing into the game. Many players may be hesitant to play a full-on role-playing game, but by sprinkling it in for fun, Nightmare is able to enhance the experience. There are many other VHS board games, and even though I haven't played many of them, I believe it's the thought and care put into the overall design and idea behind Nightmare that sets it apart from others of the time. Everything from the box design, to the individual pieces, to the music on the VHS tape. The horror aesthetic lends itself really well to this kind of timed game because it adds to the real-life tension of a timer and applies it to the players. The stress of looking up to the television every now and then and seeing a timer counting down makes you scared and nervous, even without all the aesthetics of the game. So when you start to take all these different elements into account when it comes to the actual gameplay, the pieces, the video, the gatekeeper, and the overall aesthetic of the game, all these pieces work hand in hand to create an experience.
Answer me, you maggot! Answer me! That player is banished to the black hole!
I've something very special to show you.
Never ever come closer to me again, you maggot! And your nightmare!
Listen to it scream.
After Nightmare was released, this spawned many games in the Atmosphere series, including expansions for the original, Nightmare 2, 3, and 4, as well as multiple Atmosphere games throughout the 90s and 2000s. Most recently, Nightmare had a 30th anniversary Kickstarter campaign in 2021, raising above and beyond its goal. This game has a strong cult following that has captivated audience since the early 90s. As stated before, in terms of actual gameplay, the game is nothing special. You roll dice, draw cards, and let an angry man yell "STOP!" at you every couple of minutes. So, why would you play this? What makes this game worthy of getting a 30-year anniversary Kickstarter campaign? I believe the answer is that Nightmare is less about the actual game you're playing and more about the experience of playing the game. Playing this game for the first time is just pure fun. If you go in blind like I did, all you know is you have to lug out your VCR player, set up the whole board, and watch along on a video. These days you can find a copy of the tape online, and the new version contains a DVD and streamable video. However, I'd recommend, if at all possible, to try and find a physical copy of the original game for your first time, as this adds to the experience. Much like collecting anything such as vinyl records or DVDs, the tangible element just adds another level of immersiveness to the game. The game starts with an ominous message to
turn the volume up and the lights down.
When I first played, the only light was from the glow of the TV and a few candles we added just for fun. When I talk about the experience of Nightmare, this is what I mean. Just letting yourself have fun with the pure absurdity of the game. The best way for me to try to describe what I'm talking about is by comparing it to another board game. My favorite board game is Settlers of Catan. I've played Catan hundreds of times, but why? Yes, the experience is fun, having a few drinks and playing with friends, but Besides the occasional game when something crazy happens, you play games like Catan because the game itself is fun and has replay value. For Nightmare, to be brutally honest, the game itself is nothing special. Really, it just boils down to rolling dice and hoping that it works out in your favor before the hour's up, with some extra challenges and punishments just for fun. But the difference between a game like Catan and a game like Nightmare is that you will remember Nightmare every time you play it. The experience in and of itself is special. Nightmare is a decent game, but a fantastic and hilarious experience. Speaking of the game being hilarious, I'm actually editing the video right now, but I stumbled across this music video that apparently exists, and I just feel like it's my duty to show you all a piece of it. Anyways, back to what I was saying. Sometimes, appreciating the experience of something rather than the thing itself is hard to do. I often find myself falling into the trap of feeling like I'm wasting my time on various things in life. And this is how I felt after I first played Nightmare. I felt like because the game wasn't great and the video was going to be the same every time, that it was just a waste of time. However, reflecting on the game made me realize a very important philosophical revelation about myself when it comes to media, and it's something I believe we can use more in real life too. I realized that the more something feels like an experience, the more important it is to cherish it. And if something is an enjoyable experience, then it's not a waste of time. There are albums and songs that I listen to over and over again, movies I've watched hundreds of times, games that I've spent countless hours playing, and not because they're amazing, or genius, or poignant, but because they brought me joy. They were able to transport me to another universe, or they made me feel things I hadn't felt before, or they were able to make me laugh or scream, or I zoned out for 20 minutes while listening to them. By being aware of how you feel while doing something, or how something makes you feel, it's easier to appreciate the experience of it. And new experiences always enhance your life. I guess what I'm trying to say is that sometimes it's not about what you're doing, but how it makes you feel. If it brings you happiness, or you get to spend time with people who bring you happiness, then it's worthy of your time. If you could find some movie or song or VHS board game that tickles that part of your brain and makes you happy, cherish it. Fully appreciate it and love it. The joys in life are doing things that you love with people you love. So yes, a VHS board game from the 90s that came from the thrift store for $5 helped me learn to appreciate the experiences in my life just a little bit more. And that probably says more about me than it does the game, but I don't care because I love it anyways. Thanks for listening. Take it easy.
I release those of you in the black hole. Something there that I can see. I'm living in a nightmare. Hey. Come on. Thrill